We've got some Elevate students in the house, right? Some junior high students here. We've got some Impact students, high school students here. All right. We love having each of you here. You 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. You are a huge part of our church. You matter to us. So we love having you here on the weekend. So let me just jump right in. A number of years ago, I was dating this girl who is now my wife. And one of the first kind of things we did together was she invited me to a wedding that was happening in her family. It wasn't a hint, but it was just something where I could meet her extended family. And I remember we were in Phoenix at the Wrigley Mansion, this stunning facility. And all of a sudden, the bride begins to walk down these stairs. And there's tons and tons of stairs. And she is being held by her father. And her father is walking. But the way that he walks, you go, man, nobody walks with that kind of posture. He has to be someone. So I kind of lean over to my now father-in-law, and I was like, hey, what's that guy do? And he goes, he's a U.S. ambassador. I'm like, what? A U.S. ambassador? That's amazing. Where? He goes, some country in Europe, but I'm not going to tell you. I was like, oh, really? He's like, but they're really good in soccer. So, which is awesome. But I got so curious. I was like, how do you become a U.S. ambassador? Like, what does it mean to be a U.S. ambassador? And I was so curious at this wedding. I wanted to go talk to him. I got a little nervous, but I was like, man, I bet he has stories. I bet he knows things about our country. He knows things about the world. I started creating all of these stories in my mind about what it must be like to be a U.S. ambassador. So I go home, I start to study. Here's what I come to find out about what an ambassador is. An ambassador is a high-ranking dignitary who is sent out to represent their country in a foreign land. It's a high-ranking official, a diplomat. It's not someone who is voted into office. It is someone who has been appointed or chosen by a king or president. And this person then gets commissioned and sent out to represent their country's beliefs and values, to be a mouthpiece for their king or president in a foreign land. I started to imagine what would it be like if I was a U.S. ambassador? If I could pick any country to go to, and so I start thinking, I'm like, I really like Chile. What if I was a U.S. ambassador to Chile? Here's what it would literally be. I am a U.S. citizen, and because of my citizenship, someday maybe the president will pick me to be a U.S. ambassador, and I move to Santiago, Chile, and I'm there, and my job strictly is three things: to represent the United States, to represent the president, to represent our values, and to build relationships. To walk through Chile, meeting with the people, listening to their stories, talking about our relationship, and if there ever was tension, some kind of friction between the U.S. and Chile, my job would be to help bring about reconciliation. Now, as I began to do all this research on ambassadors, I began to study the best U.S. ambassador ever was Benjamin Franklin. That's what scholars believe. See, 6 months after the Declaration of Independence was signed, in December 1776, Benjamin Franklin gets sent to France. Now, during this time, there were two superpowers, England and France, and they did not like each other. They were two monarchies, but they had different views of how government should be run. And we had basically left Britain and were trying to start our own reality and have our own independence. And we knew that the only way that this would be sustainable is if we had the French on our side. So all of the leaders of the U.S. at this time got together and they're like, hey, we got to send some people and we got to somehow win the French to be on our side. And Benjamin Franklin goes, I'll go. And so we send Benjamin Franklin over. Now, he was probably the worst dressed of like the politicians of that day, going to France. And he doesn't live in Paris. He decides to live in a smaller town called Passy. And while he's there, he learns the French language. He learns the French art of persuasion. And he begins to speak to them. And the French loved him. They loved his humble dress. They loved his intellect. They loved the questions that he asked. And in their own language, Benjamin Franklin persuaded the French to be on our side, to help finance and to fight with us so that we could defeat Britain. And scholars say if it wasn't for Benjamin Franklin, we would not have won the Revolutionary War. To this day, Franklin is beloved in France. And if you talk to most French people, they say, Benjamin Franklin, he was our favorite US president, which he was never a US president, but that's just how they view him, which is so awesome to me. Now, what makes a good ambassador? What makes someone to be like renowned for doing their role very well? Here's a couple things to think about. What makes a good ambassador is someone who is loyal. Loyal to their king, loyal to their prime minister, loyal to the president, loyal to their country and the ethos of what that government desires. They've got passion. They believe it. It's not just some kind of intellect up here, but they believe it in their bones and in their soul. And they're humble. And the whole idea of humble, like at the root and the core, humility is about good soil. That's kind of where the idea of the word comes from, because out of good soil, out of humility, something can grow, blossom, and bloom. You got to be humble because you're walking into different cultural situations, and you got to come with good questions. You got to be able to listen. You can't just speak or you'll come across arrogant or proud. You got to be wise. You got to have some sense of emotional awareness, because when you're dealing with different customs, different sensitivities, you've got to have wisdom, and you got to know your stuff. You got to know how your king or your president or your prime minister would speak in this situation, and you have to be a mouthpiece for them in this context. And lastly, you can't be afraid of conflict. You can't be afraid of tension. You can't be afraid of ambiguity and unknown. Your job in the midst of tension is to help bring about reconciliation, to help make two one. But over the course of history, there have been a number of people who haven't been great ambassadors. There have been some who have been quite bad. And what has kind of transpired for people who are bad ambassadors is they get to be quite hypocritical. And this word hypocrite literally is a theater term, and back in the Greek days, you would put on a mask and you would be a character, take one mask off and then put another one on, and you'd be multiple characters, multiple faces in front of an audience. And a bad ambassador has multiple faces in which that they are giving away to another group of people. Not one loyal person and persona and voice that they're speaking, but all of a sudden they're this way to this person, this way to this person, this way to this person, and they have no foundation. Second thing, it makes a bad ambassador is they can be quite indifferent, just indifferent. As I was researching, I came across some Egyptian ambassadors who have been living in New York City, and they have racked up $1.9 million in parking fines since 2007. That's awesome. Like, I'm just going to park here. It's all right. Just can get out of my car. So they created Uber, and they paid it all back. No, they didn't create Uber. That's just a joke. Here's amazing. Another thing that makes a bad ambassador is someone who's quite pretentious. They have this superiority complex. They think that they are better because of where they come from than everyone else, and they kind of look down at people. There was one U.S. ambassador in the 70s who went to Nicaragua, and he lived in a house that was probably the 5th largest house in the whole land. And in 1972, an earthquake rattled this region of Nicaragua, and 10,000 people died instantly. Another 15,000 people were severely injured in this earthquake. So local people came to the U.S. ambassador's house, knocked on the door, and said, hey, can we please turn your massive house into a field hospital? And he said, no, get off my property. And he closed the door. This U.S. ambassador was not about building relationships. He in no way, shape, or form wanted to deal with the people. The only person in Nicaragua that he would talk to was the dictator. And the people could not stand him. But it even gets worse. This guy's wife, cat, gets sick. This cat gets sick. And what does this U.S. ambassador do? he flies in veterinarians from all over South America to save the cat. Let's just say the Nicaraguan people could not stand him, and for a season could not stand the U.S. because of him. Fourth thing is that some bad ambassadors can be quite reckless with their words. They don't think about the cultural customs. They just say what is on their mind. They do whatever they want. They forget that they represent the king and their country. And reckless people just say what they feel instead of speaking on behalf of. And lastly, bad ambassadors can be so addicted to power that in many ways they can try to oppress someone else. They want their regime to be in control no matter what the cost is. Now, what's amazing is Paul begins speaking to this little church in a city called Corinth. And Corinth was this kind of emerging city that many people say was similar to Vegas. A lot of people would come into the city. What happened in Corinth stayed in Corinth. People would do a number of perverse things. There were temples, and it was insanity what took place and transpired here. But a church was being built, and the epicenter of this perversion and in this brokenness. And Paul was trying to tell these people in the church who they actually are. Look what it says in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Paul begins to talk and he says, I want you to understand a couple things. You are a new creation. The old, the past, all of those labels that have been handed to you, it's all gone. Because of Christ, the new is here. You are emerging and becoming something entirely different. And here's why, verse 18. All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us, every one of us as a follower of Jesus in this room and in the atrium and all over, gave us the ministry of reconciliation. That God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting people's sins against them. And he is committed to each and every one of us this message of reconciliation. We are, therefore, Christ's ambassadors. As though God were making his appeal through us, we implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. See, what Paul begins to tell this church is you got to understand something. You're a new creation. All the old, all of the past, all of the brokenness, all of those labels, it's gone. You're something new because you have been made right with God. And since that you have been made right with God, you've got a role to play. You are an ambassador. You are an ambassador. Now, here's what it looks like in Paul's theology. For Paul, this idea of a new creation, he'll say to the church in Philippi, you are a citizen of heaven. See, for many of us, we find our identity in being a U.S. citizen or a citizen of another country. We find our identity in how we vote. We find our identity in what team we root for. We find our identity in how much money we have. We find our identity in what zip code we live in. We find our identity in what car we drive. And Paul would say, no. Your identity as a Christ follower, first and foremost, is that you are a citizen of heaven. You are a part of the commonwealth of eternity. This is who you are. The old is gone. The new is here. And because of that, friends, you're here on earth for a reason. You're in your city for a reason. You're in your school for a reason. You are on that team for a reason. You are sitting in that cubicle Monday through Friday for a reason. You live in that house for a reason. You go to that Starbucks for a reason. You are here for a reason. For what? To be Christ's ambassador. To stand as an ambassador representing your king wherever you go. You know what's problematic for an ambassador? If they take a day off. If they take a meeting off. If they go, I'm just gonna kind of do this my own thing over here. I'm just gonna speak my mind. And this isn't what the president thinks. This is not what I'm just gonna speak my mind. I'm just gonna get on Twitter and I'm gonna say whatever I feel like. No. See, an ambassador recognizes that wherever they go, they represent something far superior than themselves. They understand that wherever they go, they represent Christ. This is you. See, God put his image in every one of you. See, every other religion was about building things that some human would build to kind of say, hey, this is what God is like. And God said, no, I do something completely different. I put my image in every one of you so that you will showcase to the world what I am like. This is God saying, you know what? You will be my mouthpiece. You will showcase my glory. You will tell the world what I am truly like. So represent me well. And you got to represent me, then you got to be about the things that matter most to me. And what matters most to me is people, my creation. You, as Christ's ambassadors, are people who go and build relationships, people who are far from God, people who are wrestling with God, people who are doubting God, people who love God, people who are angry with God, people who want nothing to do with God, people who believe in a different God. It doesn't matter. We are the people who go to them. We are the people who model the invitational life. We are the people who want to build relationships because we know they matter. They matter to our God. And so they matter to us. And not only do we build relationships, but we know that we have a story. Whether you are in here and you're in 7th grade and you have come to a relationship with Christ, I want to tell you, you have a story about how God has showcased his grace and his glory. If you're a junior in high school, you have a message of reconciliation. You have a story how God has shown up in your life and you have something to give away. Whether you're 20-something, beginning your life in the marketplace, you have a story to give away. Whether you are a parent, single parent, you're at home raising kids, yet you have a story to give away. Whether you're someone who drops your kids off at school, you have a story to give away. Every one of you who are a follower of Jesus as a Christ ambassador has a message of reconciliation. The question you have to ask yourself is simply this: what kind of ambassador am I? I mean, I've been sitting on this thinking about it. And to be honest, it can be difficult to represent Christ 24/7. And sometimes I get on Twitter and I'll see someone say something and I'm like, I want to jump in and speak my mind. And I remember, it's not about my mind to speak. As Christ's ambassador, it's about learning to speak on Christ's behalf. How would he engage the situation? There are times when I walk into a place and I just want to hide. And I can sense in those whispers to go out and build relationships, but I just need to take a day off. I need to take a play off. I just don't want to do it. And it's not just looking for renewal. It's not about Sabbath. It's literally about me going, I don't want to. And then there are times when I know that there is tension and that a certain question that I could ask or a certain story from my life that I could share. And there are times where I just want to take a play off. And in that, I have to go back to going, well, what makes a good ambassador and what makes a bad ambassador? A good ambassador longs to be loyal to their king. A good ambassador is someone who is humble. A good ambassador is someone who's passionate and wise. A good ambassador is someone who recognizes the power to reconcile and wants to give that away. But there are many moments in my life where I can come across pretentious, superior. I just want to talk to them. I can come across in a way that just seems hypocritical. And what's really been rocking me through this message is about the invitation that Paul was trying to tell this young church to try and raise them up to see themselves as God sees them, as ambassadors, as storytellers, as the people who behold the glory of God. And friends, that's you and me. for this region. That's you and me. I believe that Paul, if he was here, he would say, every one of you is an ambassador. And he'll say later on in chapter 6, verse 1, as God's co-workers, we urge you not to receive God's grace in vain. Not to receive God's grace in vain. As God's co-workers, as God's ambassadors, as these ministers of reconciliation, don't take what's been freely given to you and hold on to it. See, rivers got to flow. Rivers got to move. Water's got to be extended. Water's got to keep moving. But when we just block it up and we kind of hold that water, it gets stale and bugs and dirt, all that stuff. It just blocks the flow of a living stream. And here, Paul's saying, as God's co-workers, I urge you, I beg you, I plead with you, I ask you, don't stop living the invitational life. Don't just hold grace for yourself. See, this message wasn't just a message that Paul preached. It was also a message that Jesus taught. There's this great story in Matthew where Jesus begins to take his disciples. And he says, hey, we're going to go for a walk. They're like, where are you going? Where are we going, Jesus? Where are we going? Just follow me. Just follow me. And they find themselves walking some 23, 24 miles outside of Jerusalem. And they come to a city called Caesarea Philippi. Now, this city was a bizarro city as they come. It was built on a massive rock, and inside this rock, all of this water would flow into this rock. And many people said it was the gates to the underworld. Alexander the Great's soldiers, who were protecting this region centuries before the days of Jesus, decided to create a religion. And it was all centered around this Greek god named Pan, who was half goat, half man. And every other year, 250,000 people would come into Caesarea Philippi at the bottom of this rock, filled with temples built into this rock, and they would try to arouse the god of Pan. And they would do things that were so perverse, so broken, so fractured. If I told you, you wouldn't even believe me. And Jesus walks his disciples, comes to a cliff overlooking the temples and the city. And he looks at his disciples and he says, what good is it for a man to gain the whole world and yet forfeit his soul? What good is it? What good is it? And then Jesus looks at Peter and he says, and I'm going to build my church on this rock. Now, most people have always kind of translated this story as Jesus looking at Peter and saying, hey, I'm going to build my church on you, Peter. No. Jesus builds his church on himself. But what he's saying is, hey, Peter, I'm going to send you into this rock, into these temples, into this brokenness, in this pain, in this perversion, in this distortion of my story and my Father's grace. I'm going to send you there to build my church. And then he says, and the gates of Hades will not overcome. Translation, and the gates of hell will not be able to stop you. Now, there's this amazing band from Los Angeles, and in one of their songs, they have like this little bit of a bridge, and inside the bridge, there's this moment where it just kind of gets really, really slow, and it just says, it has to start somewhere. It has to start sometime. What better place than here? What better time than now? All hell can't stop us now. And every time I hear that lyric, I think about what Jesus was saying. It has to start somewhere. It has to start sometime. What better place than here? What better time than now? The gates of Hades will not overcome us. So back to Paul. Paul understands that the citizens of heaven, this is who we are. We are here as Christ's ambassadors to represent Christ, to build relationships, and to bring this reconciliation message. But I want you to see something. What Paul was trying to write to tell people about this Jesus way was in complete opposition and contradiction to the way of Rome. See, Rome was led by Caesars, and the Caesars of those days, all they solely desired was world domination. And they'd conquer one nation and one territory and one city and one province and one state. They'd set up a little bit of a puppet government and then just keep moving on. We were going to conquer the world domination. And so much of the New Testament writers are writing under this perspective of who do you think is better, Jesus or Caesar? And the way of Rome was once we conquered you, our Caesar would kind of stay back in Rome, and if you have a problem with us, then you come to us. If you have a question for us, then you come to us. If you want to talk with the Caesar, then you come to us. If you think about being in India and your land gets conquered, then this community would actually choose some person. And they'd have to get on horseback or a chariot, and they'd have to ride up to Rome, and they'd have to approach the Caesar. What's fascinating to me is one of those Caesars, his name was Augustus. And Augustus would make humanity bring their appeals to them, but God is not like Caesar, and Jesus is far greater than Caesar. Jesus and God, they send out humanity to make his appeal to the people. It's so different. Rome would say like, all right, come to me. Come to me. You come to me. If you got a problem, come to me. You got a question, come to me. You want something better, come to me. If your life you think you need it, come to me. Come to me. Come to me. Jesus and God were like, go to them. Go to them. Go to them. Go to them. Quick question. If you had to grade your invitational life, would you be more like Rome, come to me? Or more like Jesus, go to them? Would you be more like Rome, hey, you know what, I'm not gonna go talk to those people. They're gonna have to come to me if they've got questions. Or would you be more like Jesus, and would you be more like the first church who went to them? Come to me, go to them. Come to me, or go to them. See, as Christ's ambassadors, we represent the way of Jesus. We represent the heart of God. We go to people building relationships because we know we've got this story, this message of reconciliation. Questions for you. How well are you representing Christ right now? How well are you living